An article on quantum physics, family stories about ghosts, and mid-20th century fantastic comedies, these are the ingredients for the cocktail that has gained everybody's love and remains popular to this day. Movies Inside Out presents.
Hello, Ghostbusters. Yes, of course they're serious.
Ghostbusters is a supernatural comedy released in 1984 that kickstarted a franchise whose appeal still hasn't waned. What did Weaver have to do to get the role of Dana? Why did one of the main cast members get upset with the filmmakers? And why could the film have had a different title? Watch our new video to get the answers. Let's go!
We got one!
The car!
The creation story. The story of Ghostbusters began in 1981 when actor and screenwriter of the popular sketch comedy show Saturday Night Live, Dan Aykroyd, accidentally read an article on quantum physics and parapsychology, which made him think about ghost traps. Actually, Aykroyd had previously been interested in paranormal phenomena. Moreover, his interest was inherited. His great-grandfather was a well-known spiritualist. His grandfather attempted to communicate with spirits via radio, and his father wrote the book A History of Ghosts. Inspired by mid-20th century ghost comedies, Dan wrote the screenplay for the future film, planning to star in it alongside Eddie Murphy and his close friend and Saturday Night Live colleague, John Belushi. However, Aykroyd's plans were not meant to work out. In March 1982, Belushi died of a drug overdose. Then the writer turned to another former colleague from the show, Bill Murray, who immediately agreed to join the project. As for the director, Aykroyd invited Ivan Reitman to join the crew. His last work was the successful comedy Stripes, starring Bill Murray. Then Reitman invited Harold Ramis to rewrite the screenplay. In March 1983, Reitman presented the concept of the future film to Columbia Pictures head Frank Price, who, however, was not so enthusiastic about the project and refused to allocate a large budget for all the planned special effects.
Volunteered, didn't you? We're paying you, aren't we?
Yeah, but I didn't know you were gonna be giving me electric shocks.
Reitman assured Price that they would only need $25 or $30 million, and the producer agreed on the condition that the film would be released by June 1984. Thus, they had only 13 months left to complete the film. At the time, they didn't even have a finished screenplay or shooting start date. You see, these Hollywood people don't even get off their couch for $30 million.
So what do we do? Could you come over here and talk to me for a second, please? Could you just come over here for a second, please?
Ramis and Aykroyd began editing the screenplay, and the final version was ready by August 1983. Later, Reitman said that the most difficult parts of the screenplay were defining the plot's goal and the villain's motivations, as well as the reasons for the appearance of ghosts and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
The choice is made.
Whoa, whoa, whoa!
The traveler has come.
Nobody choose anything! Did you choose anything? No! Did you?
Mine is totally blank.
I didn't choose anything!
The movie required lots of special effects, but at that time, all major studios were busy creating effects for other films. So Reitman decided to create his own studio and contacted Oscar-winning Richard Edlund, offering him to head it. The producers agreed to allocate $5 million to the new company named Boss Film Studios. After that, the creators began searching for designers and artists.
Do you believe in UFOs, astral projections, mental telepathy, ESP, clairvoyance, spirit photography, telekinetic movement, full trance mediums, the Loch Ness Monster, and the theory of Atlantis?
Casting. After finishing the screenplay and finding the special effects artists, the producers began casting actors. Bill Murray was the main candidate for the role of Peter Venkman, and he eventually played it. However, the actor was famous for not signing contracts until the last notice, so as a precaution, the filmmakers also considered Michael Keaton, Chevy Chase, Tom Hanks, Robin Williams, Steve Guttenberg, and Richard Pryor. The role of Egon Spengler could have gone to Christopher Walken, John Lithgow, Christopher Lloyd, Jeff Goldblum, or again, Keaton. In the end, the creators decided to give the role to the film's screenwriter, Harold Ramis. As for the role of Ray Stantz, there was no need to search for candidates, as Dan Aykroyd originally reserved it for himself.
Dr. Ray Stantz, would you please? The heart of the Ghostbusters.
According to Aykroyd, the role of Winston Zeddemore was intended for Eddie Murphy, although Reitman later denied it. Zeddemore could have been played by Gregory Hines or Reginald VelJohnson, but the role went to Ernie Hudson, who had to audition 5 times.
This is Winston Zeddemore. He's here about the job.
Beautiful, you're hired. Ray Stantz, Pete Venkman.
Congratulations.
According to the actor, in the early version of the screenplay, his role was more significant and sophisticated, and he wanted it so badly that he agreed to work for half his usual salary. But before filming began, Hudson received a new script with a reduced role. Reitman explained that he did it to expand Murray's character. Later, the actor admitted that during filming, he felt discriminated against because of his skin color and had been troubled by it for many years. For the role of Dana Barrett, auditions were held for Daryl Hannah, Denise Crosby, Kelly LeBrock, and Julia Roberts, but the creator's choice fell on Sigourney Weaver. Initially, some opposed her candidacy because of her serious roles in Alien and The Year of Living Dangerously. However, Weaver told them about her comedy experience at the School of Drama at Yale University, and during the audition, even played a possessed demon dog, convincing the team that she would perfectly handle the role of Dana.
Okay, so she's a dog.
The role of Louis Tolley was written specifically for John Candy, but he couldn't connect with the character and declined to work on the project. Reitman then sent the script to Rick Moranis, with whom he had worked before, and he immediately agreed. As for Janine Melnitz, she could have been portrayed by comedian Sandra Bernhard, but she declined the proposal, so the role ultimately went to Annie Potts. The role of the Sumerian deity Gozer was intended for Paul Rubens, but he rejected the creator's offer, and his place was taken by Serbian model and actress Slavica Jovan. Her lines were dubbed by Patty Edwards due to the actress's strong Slavic accent. The filming process.
Want to play rough? Yeah! Let's go! Hey, go!
Filming of the Ghostbusters began in New York on October 28, 1983. Interestingly, at the time, shooting a film in New York was very risky due to the high crime rate. The center of the entertainment industry was not New York but Los Angeles. The director encouraged improvisation from the lead actors and included the best takes in the film. Many such spontaneous scenes were shot in iconic locations around the city, including Rockefeller Center, where the actors were once chased away by a real security guard. One of the buildings on Central Park West served as Dana's home and the site of the final battle between the Ghostbusters and Gozer, who took the form of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. On the same street, a crowd chanted the word Ghostbusters. By the way, at that moment, the creators were not sure if they could use this word as the film's title. The thing is, it was associated with a 1970s children's show owned by Universal Studios, so Columbia considered alternative titles like Ghost Stompers and Ghost Breakers. Fortunately, the producers managed to resolve the copyright issue and got the desired titles. The exterior of the Ghostbusters headquarters was a firehouse in the Tribeca area.
Does this pole still work? Wow, this place is great!
As for the fictional Weaver Hall, Columbia University allocated one of its buildings under the condition that the university's name wouldn't appear in the film. Additionally, filming took place at New York City Hall, the main branch of the New York Public Library, and the Lincoln Center. The first stage of filming took 6 weeks and ended before Christmas. Then, the crew moved to Los Angeles, a place where qualified technicians worked on practical special effects and high-quality sound stages. Most of the Los Angeles shoots took place in real locations as well as at the Burbank studio. Since the New York firehouse was operational, Reitman couldn't shoot the interiors there, so these shots were done at a closed firehouse in Los Angeles. Additionally, the film crew could only occupy the New York Public Library Hall early in the morning, so the basement library shelves were represented by those of the Los Angeles Central Library. The scenes in the non-existent Sedgwick Hotel were set in the Millennium Biltmore Hotel. The design of the ghosts was inspired by Edlund's previous work for the horror film Poltergeist. However, the designer had to strike a balance between making the ghosts a real threat and fitting the film's comedic tone. Almost all the ghosts in the movie were puppets. For example, the ghost librarian was created using a cast of the actress's body who played the real librarian. This cast later became her animatronic double, equipped with cables for controlling movements and facial expressions. Special effects artist Steve Johnson created the final version of the green ghost known as Slimer right on the set, but it took him 6 months and around $300,000 to develop it. Slimer was also a puppet made of foam latex. It was worn by a puppeteer dressed in black and filmed against a black background so that all the extra details could be easily removed in post-production. According to the script, the height of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was over 100 feet, but in reality, it was about 6 feet.
Well, there's something you don't see every day.
Tried to think of the most harmless thing. Something I loved from my childhood. Something that could never, ever possibly destroy us. Mr. Stay Puft.
Nice thinking, Ray.
Billy Bryan transformed into the monster on set, modeling its gait inspired by Godzilla. In total, 18 costumes were made of foam, each costing about $30,000. 17 of them were burned during filming. And by the way, the foam was quite toxic, so the puppeteer had to be additionally supplied with oxygen. To shoot large-scale scenes with the Marshmallow Man, the creators brought over 100 toy cars and moved them with remote control. By the way, in the scene where the car crashed into a fire hydrant, they used sand instead of water because it looked better when the image was scaled down. As for the marshmallow falling on the crowd after the Marshmallow Man's destruction, the creators used shaving cream. I hope Gillette got the hint. Additionally, it was planned to use 150 pounds of shaving cream, but during testing, this mass immediately knocked down a stuntman, so they used only 75 pounds. By the way, after long shoots, the shaving cream started to irritate the actor's skin, causing rashes. This could have been anti-advertising for your competitors. For all the ghost costumes, the designers created several different heads made of foam and fiberglass with different facial expressions controlled by a team of puppeteers using ropes and rods. They also made tiny ghost models for wide shots, such as in the scene with Slimer flying around the ceiling at the Sedgwick Hotel. The particle throwers used by the Ghostbusters to fight ghosts were equipped with flash bulbs, which helped the special effects team see the point from which the light beam should come. The proton packs weighed about 35 pounds because they had the batteries that powered the bulbs. However, they also had lighter versions of the packs. The actors used them in scenes where they didn't need the throwers. The whole filming process took about 60 days and was completed at the end of January 1984. Editor Sheldon Kahn completed the full editing of the 105-minute film just 3 weeks after the filming ended. Due to the overly compressed production schedule, Reitman made changes during the filming process, and often there was only enough time for a few takes. According to the director, it would have been good to pre-plan the special effects storyboards and have an opportunity to return to shooting additional scenes, but the schedule and budget were strictly limited. Elmer Bernstein, who had previously worked on several of Reitman's films, composed the soundtrack for Ghostbusters and joined the project even before all the actors were confirmed. The director wanted the music to be realistic without giving the audience hints about what to laugh at. Bernstein later called the Ghostbusters the most difficult score he had written. Balancing comedic and mystical tones turned out to be more challenging than he had anticipated. In addition to the original music, the film also featured songs Magic by Mick Smiley and Ghostbusters by Ray Parker Jr. By the way, the latter became a big hit, topping the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Movie mistakes and errors. Like any other film, Ghostbusters couldn't avoid various mistakes due to the creator's carelessness. And now, following our new tradition, please pause the video and write in the comments below how many movie mistakes you think there are in this film. Well, let's start. At the beginning of the film, the stacks of books on the librarian's carts are arranged differently in close-ups and wide shots. By the way, as the Ghostbusters head to the office, a girl in a striped sweater walks towards Egon, but she disappears completely in the next shots. In the scene where Dana gets out of the taxi with the groceries, the items in her bag change their position in different shots. Also, egg splatters on the table change their shape and size depending on the shot size. When Dana encounters the monster from the fridge, the number of bottles on the door changes in shots from the inside. And when Peter first comes to Dana's home, the piano lid opens and closes in different shots. On the same piano, the head in the cylinder mysteriously changes its position. In the same scene, you can see a frame from the end of the movie on the cover of a newspaper. The violinist with whom Dana leaves after talking to Venkman holds the instrument case differently. Venkman himself wears a dirty suit before meeting Dana, which magically becomes clean but later gets dirty again when he returns to the base. When Peck approaches the Ghostbusters headquarters, the door of the building is in shadow, but in the shot from the inside, bright sunlight falls on the door. In the scene where Lewis runs from the ghost, he says something about a tenants meeting and pets, but his mouth is just motionless open. So during the shooting of this scene, he ran silently and the speech was dubbed later.
Bring us up at the next tenants meeting. There's not supposed to be any pets in the building.
The same wide shot is used twice in the film. At the beginning, it's natural, and then with special effects. You can also notice that one of the pieces of concrete wall bounces unrealistically off the fence, while another easily moves away with the flow of liquid marshmallows. And in one of the scenes, the Marshmallow Man is missing a red tie, which the designers have probably just forgotten to draw. No problem. Now we're talking. There are also obvious factual errors in the film. At the beginning of the movie, Egon warns his colleagues that the streams should never cross.
There's something very important I forgot to tell you.
What?
Don't cross the streams.
But in the end, it turns out that nothing terrible happens because of this. At the meeting with the mayor, Zeddemore says that he has been working at the company for only a couple of weeks, but he joined the Ghostbusters on the same day that Peter arranged a date with Dana, meaning he has only been working with them for a few days. Interestingly, Winston's badge reads Zeddemore, but in the credits it is spelled Zedmore. At the end of the film, Ray claims that they've experienced an event comparable to the Tunguska catastrophe in 1909.
You have been a participant in the biggest interdimensional crossrip since the Tunguska blast of 1909.
However, the meteorite actually fell in 1908. As we can see, there are quite a few movie mistakes and errors gathered here.
Oh my God.
What other mistakes do you know that didn't make it into our video? Share them in the comments. Deleted scenes and bloopers. Due to the tight shooting schedule, the creators of Ghostbusters had to clearly understand why they were filming each scene, so there weren't too many extra scenes. Reitman's wife and their children, Jason and Catherine, could have appeared in minor roles as a family running out of a building, but this scene had to be cut because Jason was too scared of the set and couldn't do a second take. Also, they deleted a love scene between Ray and the female ghost. Reitman deemed it unnecessary for the rapidly developing plot, so he used it as the character's dream in the middle of the film. Interestingly, in all German TV versions, they cut Venkman's line,
He's a sailor, he's in New York. We get this guy laid, we won't have any trouble.
but it still appears in DVD versions. Additionally, some rough expressions were often softened in the TV version. In 2019, at the Ghostbusters Fan Fest dedicated to the film, they showed rare and previously unpublished materials, including deleted and alternate scenes, as well as funny bloopers where actors couldn't hold back their laughter. Watching them, you can see Bill Murray's improvisation skills as he played the same scenes differently in various takes. Also, one blooper eventually became famous. When meeting Slimer, Murray ended up on the floor covered in slime, and when he asked what happened, he replied,
He slimed me.
That's great! Actual physical contact!
worldwide recognition. Ghostbusters hit theaters on June 8, 1984, and became the top-earning movie.
Professional paranormal investigations and eliminations. The franchise rights alone will make us rich beyond our wildest dreams.
By the way, the test public screening was also successful, but receiving feedback from industry colleagues was tense. The audience sat poker-faced and after the screening expressed sympathy for the creators of Ghostbusters. The film left theaters in early January 1985, earning $229 million and falling short by $5 million to the action comedy film Beverly Hills Cop, starring Eddie Murphy. By the way, if you want us to make a video about the creation of this or any other movie, write your suggestions in the comments below. Overall, Ghostbusters collected over $282 million. Columbia Pictures received 73% of the profits, about $128 million. The main cast members also claimed a percentage of the box office earnings. For example, Bill Murray received between $20 and $30 million. Critics positively reviewed Ghostbusters, noting the successful combination of a blockbuster and interesting dialogues, as well as an excellent interaction between the main characters. They also called the film an exception to the rule that complex special effects ruin comedy. However, they criticized the ending, which they felt was too large-scale. Naturally, such a successful film could not go unnoticed by prestigious film awards. Ghostbusters was nominated for an Oscar and BAFTA for Best Visual Effects. As for the Golden Globe, the film received nominations for Best Film and Best Actor for Bill Murray. Also, the creators received the Saturn Award for Best Fantasy Film. The movie's theme song, Ghostbusters, received the Oscar and Golden Globe nominations and won the British Academy Award. In addition, the United States Library of Congress included the film in the National Film Registry, naming it culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. Many actors had appeared in major films before Ghostbusters, but none of them had previously taken part in blockbusters. Established actors like Murray, Aykroyd, and Ramis instantly became top-tier stars. However, Murray's next film, The Razor's Edge, was not successful, and the actor decided to take a break from the spotlight for several years. However, in 1988, he successfully returned and continues to play various roles to this day. Similarly, Sigourney Weaver's career remains as vibrant as ever. After the success of Ghostbusters, Harold Ramis actively pursued directing, eventually making the cult classic Groundhog Day with Murray. Ernie Hudson regretted that his role in the film failed to elevate his career to a new level, although he had initially hoped for it. Since then, the actor has appeared in more than 200 films and TV shows, but Winston Zeddemore remains the most memorable character he's ever portrayed. Dan Aykroyd continues to work in Hollywood, mostly playing supporting roles, and still participates in the development of the Ghostbusters franchise. Speaking about the franchise, there was also the animated series The Real Ghostbusters that aired on television from 1986 to 1991. In 1989, the sequel, Ghostbusters 2, was released, earning much less money than the first film and receiving less positive reviews. The studio planned to make a third film, but initially the project couldn't get off the ground due to Murray's reluctance to return to his role, and later because of Harold Ramis' death in 2014. At that point, the sequel to the original story was replaced by a reboot. In 2016, they released Ghostbusters with an all-female cast, and in 2021, Ghostbusters Afterlife, directed by Ivan Reitman's son, Jason. In addition, the movie Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is scheduled for release in March 2024. Ghostbusters was recognized as a genuine phenomenon that had a huge influence on pop culture. The film had become the first iconic summer blockbuster that is suitable for any audience and remembered for its impressive visual effects, vibrant characters, and humor. Why do you think Ghostbusters has remained so popular after 40 years?